Welcome to Chapter 7, Transparency, Technology, and Intellectual Property. As we're going to see, we're going to try to get through 3 key objectives on this brief overview or lecture. So please just listen and read along with your textbook, do a lot of research. It'll kind of help you out. This is an ever-evolving area in which the fire service and EMS services are forced to operate. So we just want to make sure that we highlight a few key points. Obviously, we want to know about open records and open meetings. As a future manager with your college degree, that's going to be a big piece. Understanding what you have to release and when you don't. So I'll try to go through those. I did not go through and edit all the slides. I'll put the full slide deck up in the file folder as I try to normally do. But in this case, I'll just blow through some of the slides. You can go back and read them if you want to kind of use them as something rather than just recording my silly voice on a YouTube video or something. All right, so let's start. We know that we've evolved a lot. I remember when I got in the fire service, back in 2003, we had, cell phones, obviously. But the use of social networking and cameras and all that stuff is just creating a whole bunch of issues with us. So let's jump right in and talk first future management. Okay, so I could sum up the next several slides by one sentence. The people who pay our salary have the right to know what we're doing, period. And they'll tell you sometimes, more the police than the fire, but you're like, I pay your salary. And well, yeah, you do. And I appreciate that. Truthfully, this is your FOI laws, right? Now, the Federal or Freedom of Information Act is specifically a federal law. However, most of the states will utilize the FOI phrasing, terminology, and benchmarks. So here in Connecticut, we have FOI requests that we would have to submit for a state agency, or an attorney would have to submit an FOI request to a municipality, right? Now, a couple things when we talk about the open meetings, records, FOI stuff is, first of all the town people, the state people have the right to know what our meetings are going to be to discuss business. There's very few limitations on what they can find out. I will tell you it is difficult for them to get true personnel records. That's why a lot of the town I worked in, we had a fire commission, met monthly, and we would adjourn into executive session where we would discuss any personnel issues from injuries, retirements, discipline. However, the town would still get to know not necessarily what the discussion was, but what the outcome of that discussion is. So then we would go back into regular session and we would vote on it. So let's say, Scott Martis, Deputy Chief Martis is retiring, because I did, and they would adjourn into executive session. They would discuss my letter of resignation and retirement and my intention to depart the department. Then they would come back and one of the commissioners make a motion to accept Scott Martis's petition for retirement. So that kind of thing is what that is. So that's where you get your executive session, your closed session, whatever. But everything else has to be taken openly. Who was there? What was discussed? There has to be minutes made, and those things have to be public. And you'll see a lot of municipalities will actually put those on their website. In fact, if you haven't taken a look, probably wherever you live, go on your town's website, and you'll probably see PDF files of meeting minutes located there, right? We obviously, every meeting needs to have some form of public comment, public forum. Some people will, cap that by minutes, but for the most part, you have the right to come up and speak in a public forum about your publicly funded fire or EMS department, right? So there's always going to be some proprietary records, whether it be, we talk about patient confidentiality, We could talk about true personnel files, which are very difficult to obtain. But for the most part, if it has to do with the way the department is run, the public is going to have access to it, right? So, so you just, all right, let's move on here. So, all right, so this is your federal case, right? So this is the FOIA. You'll see in week 7 there's a essay question about FOI law, and just essentially I want you to kind of go into this or state, and you'll see in the instructions, and make the determination. You know, basically the essay is very simple. Explain it to me. Give me one instance where an FOI case would benefit a fire department, and one instance where it would harm them. So very, very simple stuff. All right. So here we go. This is, you know, huge. It's changing every day. Here's the deal in a legal class. We just have to understand that there's consistent state and federal laws that are being passed. In fact, at our state in Connecticut, they seem to pass brand new laws for July 1 and for October 1, which are the 2 fiscal years, municipal and federal. You know, what I would say is we just have to kind of keep an eye on it, and you just have to make sure you have a really good municipal or labor attorney. So if you're on the labor union side, just make sure you have a good labor attorney that understands this stuff or has experts. And if you're on the municipal side, make sure you got a good town attorney that understands this stuff, because it's changing so quick. And we are not attorneys. We are firefighters and paramedics and EMTs. And so we need to make sure that we have our experts, right? You know, just like the police sometimes are not up to date on the latest law or the interpretation of the law based on their training, we're going to have, you know, legislators and stuff that also are not up to date on these things, right? So understand that, you know, just a couple key points. It used to be very taboo for the federal government to monitor private communications. We've had some erosion on those constitutional protections, you know, in the name of safety. So, you know, again, what can be recorded, what can't be recorded, that's something that you're just going to want to run by. So, you know, I remember years ago, we had a labor dispute where they were recording the telephone, the town telephone, but there was no notification of that. You know, but, you know, so there was a labor, you know, dispute that they were recording the public phone, the town's phone. So they had to put up signs that said your phone call being recorded. You know, that's not the case anymore. So just, you know, in a public domain, just make sure you research that and understand, because it's changing all the time, right? What has not changed is we can't be intercepting electronic transmissions and stuff. And this is really the anti-piracy stuff. So for the most part, if we're transmitting things across electronics, it's any person, not a government entity, should not be intercepting that. And so that would include us. So if you are, you know, potentially recording, it's just something to be, you know, cognizant of. You know, confidential CALIA screens or collect screens in your dispatch center or something along those lines. Just, you know, taking pictures of the CAD notes on your iPad. A lot of the iPads will disable the self screen snap. There could be some, that could be considered an intercept, depending on how you use it, right? And then we just kind of pretty much talked about the use of recordings, and now we get into multimedia, right? So let's just understand that whenever we're operating with these cyber laws, it is very difficult to explain the ability of somebody to record you. So again, we don't know. So you'll hear people rant and rave in the firehouse. Oh, they're not allowed to videotape me, or they're not allowed to record me unless I know, and that's not necessarily true. So we just need to make sure that we are vigilant, that we are always assuming that we're being recorded, that we do not respond when people try to get us agitated. You'll see one of the things that I would love people to watch is there's a YouTube video. If you basically type in like transparency or FOI, you can walk into any public space in any town-owned or state-owned building videotaping with your phone, and you can't be presented. And there are going to be cases of town employees being terrible, and there are going to be cases of town employees being absolutely perfect. Like, you want to come in and videotape, videotape. If it's in the public domain, if it could be visualized by the public and it is in a non-secured area, that it is open to videotape and publication. Same thing with law enforcement. You'll see this a lot. Name and badge number, name and badge number. And I will highlight where I used to work in North Haven. Their police department is trained very well. They always give their name and badge number. If they're asked, "Hi sir, what's your name?" "My name is Baddock, badge number 537. Like, just right off of the bat. Like, they don't even mess around. And that's huge. And we need to kind of be the same way in the fire service. Understanding, like, there might be signs that say restricted area, authorized personnel only. That protects you from them videotaping. However, if that door is open and one of the guys is running around in their boxer shorts, and somebody snaps a video from the apparatus bay that doesn't say restricted area, authorized personnel only, it's public record. There's nothing you can do about that. So, you know, the safety thing is just always assume you're being recorded and act appropriately. Where we start to see with EMS, right? We know HIPAA and patient confidentiality. We need to be very, very cognizant of that. We should not be recording. There's a new Tiger Connect owns a product. It used to be called Triage. That's pretty big in the state of Connecticut now for communicating with the hospital. It's HIPAA compliant, it's encrypted, and it disables the ability for the phone to do a screenshot. These are things that you have to be careful of if you're starting to look at new technologies, right? Telehealth, telemedicine, sitting in somebody's room now. We can't just use FaceTime to communicate with a neurosurgeon on a 911 call. You have to use an encrypted HIPAA device that stores it on an encrypted cloud, because if that leaks out, you could be liable as the service and potentially the provider, right? And we're not allowed to disclose if we went to a medical call. So we can disclose our run numbers, and we can disclose where we went and what the generalized dispatch would be. But we're not allowed to say we went there for a medical D chest pain. We could say we responded to a car accident, or we responded to a medical emergency at 123 Main Street. So that's, again, very important, because if you're recording things, we're talking about putting body cameras in ambulances, and you've got the police department has body cameras, and they may be on the medical call. So these things can all get very convoluted. So I just think it's important for you to remain vigilant. Most of the time, the police are really good at shutting off their cameras when they're at a medical call. Ambulances are having, there's ambulance recording devices in the back of an ambulance, mainly for safety and et cetera. That stuff, again, you're dealing with an AMR. They have, an international network of cybersecurity experts that are keeping that safe. You're dealing with a small department like North Haven, or, on a national level, like a New Haven, which is of 400 people, is that are they substantive enough in their cybersecurity protocols that they can protect that data? And so that's what we just want to make sure. Everything seems like a great idea at its face, but you certainly want to just make sure that you research that effectively and appropriately, right? So I'm not going to beat social network up. You should have a good policy. I absolutely advise looking at social network platforms when you hire. Might sound like a jerk thing to do, but you don't want to have this problem. I mean, how many times I got to sit there and like text somebody, "Just shut up, dude. You're killing me." I had again, I'm out of the fire service with the exception of education and some associate volunteering, but I'm still friends with a lot of people who are chief officers, and somebody that used to work for me blasted a bunch of chiefs on a media outreach, about how bad they were. And I got 2 text messages about if the guy still worked for me or not. So, there's nothing I was going to do about it. I mean, I'm not in the fire service anymore, but it's one of those things where, just make sure your policies, make sure you know your policies. And if you're in a leadership position, make sure you write good policies that both protect the department and the organization and the taxpayers, but also ensure some form of protections for the employee as well, right? We want to make sure as leaders that we are not just us against them all the time, and understanding that don't make mistakes make sure that the policy is not so zero-sum game that they're going to be jammed up hardcore if they make a stupid picture. The other thing, and I don't know if it's on here, that I would just add to is, tell your staff if they're using their phone for taking pictures or something, there is some level of FOI request for the phone. Now, what I will say again is a good labor attorney, but in the instance of, say, Tiger Connect, one of the reasons that Triage made such a really good name is it protected the device. So if a paramedic, an EMT, a firefighter, firefighter, EMT used Triage or Tiger Connect to communicate with the hospital, nothing was stored on the device. So there was no FOI request that could go to the device. Whereas if you're taking pictures not through Tiger Connect app, and you are just taking pictures to, say, show the trauma surgeon, there is a chance that somebody could subpoena your phone, your personal phone. Again, I am a professor ex-chief, right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm sure there's many idiosyncrasies to that. But that's a good delineation. Using a cloud-based, HIPAA-compliant app is certainly going to protect you in the long run, right? So drones, a whole other thing. Just going to need to understand the cameras of the drones. Where's that stored? I would not be using personal drones. I would be using department drones because, again, the SD cards, gone, could be subpoenaed. Very, very good. But there's actual FAA 107 licensure, which I had gotten, which when I was a drone operator for the department. And that goes deep, deep, deep into what is FOIable, what you can record. But essentially, if you are up in the air and the military isn't shooting on you and the camera can see it, it's open season, it's open game. So just keep that in mind for drones and video. And now we have this entire NFPA standard that actually governs that. So that should help as well. So then we just get in really quick to trademarks and intellectual property, which you are going to research a lot. But the question is, the two things that I really am going to essentially go through with this stuff is, if you come up with something that is identifiable yours, that you created, that you would view as proprietary. And this could be anything from a software to a t-shirt, right? Or a logo. There are copyright and trademark laws that you need to petition for, and it's a lot of law to do it. And then nobody else can use that likeness, right? Now, where I will say this goes into where I think intellectual property and copyright laws and so forth play a big role with us is things like this, right? This slide shows an instructor that is using, a lesson. Now, the thing is most of the time, most instructors are going to be like, nah, you want to use somebody wants this lecture, they can have this lecture. I could care less, right? However, some people may be like, no, man, I created that. It's mine. It's copyrighted by me, right? And so, in fact, the textbook does that. I can use the lecture to teach the class when I buy the textbook. I can't use the lesson to teach the class if I don't use the textbook, right? So when I look at these things, I'm like, okay, so that's copyright. It's designed so that they can make their money on copywriting, right? But where I would say we need to be careful is if you are like, I work currently for a large academic healthcare system, right? So currently, if I am making something on their computer, they own it. Now they let me use it, but technically they own it. And in order for me to take it off of the computer that I'm using at the hospital, I have to request them, right? I have to request to be able to do that. They can say, no, you can't use that. That's our intellectual property. You created it on our device using our software on our time. That could be the same in a public setting, the town setting. The training director is getting paid to make presentations, then guess what? Those presentations belong to the town. So when we talk about intellectual property, yeah, do we make a logo, a station logo, a shift logo, a department logo? Did we invent a new product, while we were training that we decided we wanted to, trademark and copyright and sell? you know, or more likely, did we generate a report system? Did we use Microsoft Power BI to create a JDAT dashboard for, you know, key performance indicators of the department? Did we come up with an innovative new way to import ESO data into Firehouse software? Like, these are all the things that could be considered as trademarks or proprietary. That, do they belong to the individual or do they belong to the town? And so it's just something to be kind of considered of. Oh yeah, the other thing too is just remember that these things all subset, right? So like now we have all these Winnie the Pooh horror movies. The reason we have Winnie the Pooh horror movies is because Winnie the Pooh's copyright died, you know, and everybody has free access to use Winnie the Pooh's likeness. So that's the other thing. But most of us will be retired along by then, right? So nothing really, you know, crazy that I'm going to go. Just let's pay attention to social networking. Make sure you read your chapter. Pay attention to social networking. Obviously, let's address issues beforehand. That's the best I could do. Have good legal support and ensure that you guys just don't leave your department, you as a management staff potentially, or your personnel kind of out to dry with these ever governing laws. So thanks a lot. This concludes week 7, module 7 lecture, and talk to you guys later.